Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Awesome. So I'm Jessica Baratta, and I'm just so pumped to be here today to talk about designing large-scale quantitative research programs. And we're going to specifically focus today on experience measurement programs. So I bet we've all seen or interacted with these programs at one point or another, whether it's within a professional capacity or simply as consumers. And I'd like to imagine that some of your experiences could have been really positive. I also imagine that some of them may have been not that positive. Maybe they required a ton of your time, or they simply asked you for feedback at the worst possible moment. I believe the design of these experience measurement programs hold incredible research powers, and I'm excited to share my team's experience today in designing and managing these types of programs at Loblaw Digital in Toronto, Canada. So for context, Loblaw Digital is the digital arm of Canada's largest enterprise, Loblaw Companies Limited. Our teams at LD, as we like to call it, research, design, build, and operate experiences for some of Canada's biggest brands, and that spans across the industries you're seeing on screen here and into our brick and mortar locations. So I've been with the LD team now for about 3.5 years, and prior to that I was a design leader and individual contributor with various large-scale organizations. So in my current role as a mixed methods research lead, I lead an embedded team of researchers for our online grocery platform, PC Express, and our extended e-commerce marketplace. But I fell in love with grocery and the space of grocery long before this, hearing my grandfather share his experiences of working in Loblaw's grocery stores for more than 50 years. So you could say I feel pretty lucky to lead an incredibly talented team of qualitative researchers and quantitative practitioners, and as part of my role, I also oversee our experience measurement program for the business, which really focuses on measuring experiences across the millions of online grocery orders our Canadians fulfill. So internally at Loblaw Digital, we call our experience measurement program the Voice of the Customer program. But externally, these programs are roses by many names. I'm sure some are coming to mind for all of you. In my own research outside of the org, I've heard names like CX measurement, CSAT measurement. Ultimately, though, by whichever name, these programs are a strategic way to understand, collect feedback on, and measure users' experiences over time. I really want to take a moment here to focus on that concept of measuring experiences over time. If helpful, I like to think of these programs as the business's heartbeat. They help us to really keep that pulse and monitor the health of our experiences. For my team, that's for our PC Express online grocery user. For you or your team, that's the mission your user is trying to achieve. So the most common method you'll see used in these types of programs are surveys, and they're usually really lean, primarily quantitative in nature, allowing a user to move through them very quickly. But they also blend in a small amount of qualitative questions, really gathering that further depth and texture in response. So these surveys are then pushed to users at different points in their experience. And as researchers, we get this beautiful job of going into the survey vendor platform and being able to look at that data at scale and then segment it to different points of view that we're really interested in. So with that context, what I'm going to cover today are why I feel the design of these programs are so important. I'm going to get into where they can get problematic. I'm going to walk you also through the end-to-end design process my team takes in creating these types of measures, and I'm going to share with you some real examples for our service today. And hopefully by the end of this, I'm going to convince you on the powers that these programs have. So first, let's get into why I feel they're so important. And as the name suggests, they help us to measure and analyze user satisfaction and sentiment towards a user's experience over time. So for the PC Express online grocery business, it's allowed us to keep that heartbeat on our service over the past years, and also beyond that, look at different customer groups and different parts of our experience, like grocery pickup or grocery delivery. Alongside other forms of research, these programs are important in that they allow us to identify improvement and opportunity areas at all levels of the business. So you can imagine being in the online grocery space during the pandemic and the different waves, we've had to pivot our services a lot. So this heartbeat has allowed us to keep that pulse on how our customers feel about our experiences. And arguably the top reason why they're so important, they provide that higher confidence level and less risk and investment to senior leaders when they need to make decisions around research insights. Because these programs typically capture feedback from larger sample sizes, they provide those confidence levels as well as quantify what's been discovered in qualitative research. So I've seen firsthand in my role how these types of insights can in turn drive more advocacy from senior leaders for this type of work, and ultimately for more research as a whole. So now that you know why I feel the programs are so important, I'm hoping we could take a couple moments here to reflect on some service experiences we've had together. I want you to pick out one of your service experiences in your mind that maybe most recently happened. This experience for you could have been in person, it could have been online, it could have been over the phone. If you need a thought starter, maybe it's the last time you went to get your groceries, or you went out for a meal, or something completely different. Maybe you called your cell phone provider. Any experience is really going to do. But I want you to take a couple minutes here and just think about how that experience went. Think about all the parts of the experience that were really positive and maybe really aligned with your expectations. And now I want you to think about those parts of the experience that maybe didn't go so well, maybe they even frustrated you. And I want you to think about, if you had to go through that experience all over again, is there any feedback that you think would be helpful to make that experience better the next time? And for the last part, I want you to think about, if I were to pulse you and ask you for that feedback, when would be the best time to do that? Would it be within seconds of your experience? Minutes? Hours? Months from now? Maybe the spicy question, would you even want to be asked at all? This is why the design of experience measurement programs are incredibly important. Relationships are complex, and the measures that we tie to them can get super complicated and potentially even problematic for your users. So in order to design valuable measurement programs, we have to really stay cognizant of where they can get problematic. And ironically enough, it's often the design that causes the problems. It can get problematic when we ask too much of users, and that's really in the currency of their time. When we over or under contact them, when we intercept them during their mission or at a time that's just not convenient for them, when we reach out too early that they haven't had a chance to really encompass the full experience, or too late that it's almost a little too difficult to recall it. And it's always problematic when the feedback mechanism is unintuitive or unexpected. I've yet to come across that person who really likes that sketchy text or email asking for feedback. So when we look at these and we can see quite clearly they all fall under the spectrum of design, it also really highlights this opportunity for where qualitative research as a discipline is really well suited to do this type of work. And I remember when I was prepping for today, I was talking with Alec about this, that we really think of qualitative research in evaluating design when we think of that right end of the research spectrum. This is very much evaluating program design, and it's also looking at the questions underneath. So now that we know why I feel they're important, where they can get problematic, I think we're about ready to jump into the design process. And I know Brandy talked a little bit about the double diamond, so I won't go into it too much, but it's a design council framework that's really focused on innovation. We use it a lot at Loblaw Digital. If you haven't heard of the framework before, it really focuses on diverging and converging to make decisions. So my team use this framework quite often, and I'm going to walk you through the steps when it comes to thinking about experience measurement programs. So in that first phase, we're all about discovery. And in order to discover, we're going to need to go on a feedback mechanism expedition. So what's really important here is to find all of the people in your business or your organization who are talking to users. And I'd encourage you to do this whether or not your team already has an existing experience measurement program like mine did, because it's going to really open up those doors of who else is talking to users and how they're doing that. So your mission when you go on this expedition is twofold. First, you're going to want to find all those people that directly interact with users. And next, you're going to want to capture their quantitative feedback methods and mechanisms that exist. So if you're curious, this is what our list looked like at Loblaw Digital. Naturally, you can anticipate that your list is going to look a little bit different. But I remember in going through this expedition with my team, just so surprised at how many different methods and mechanisms were out there. And it really highlighted all the opportunities that these types of programs can work alongside other mechanisms within the organization. So when you're on this voyage, there's a couple key questions I wanted to give to you so that you have them to ask these different teams. And the first one is, what type of data does their team currently receive from this mechanism? You can imagine this is essentially asking, what types of questions are you asking to users? It's as if we're putting all the surveys on one table and being able to clearly see where there's duplicates and where we actually might be over-contacting users. The second question is, how is that data currently being used by their team? The reason this question is important is because it's going to give you visibility into how often they're looking at the data, if they're reporting on it in any way, and hopefully it's going to give your team some of that visibility to that data in the future. And next, another big question, what are the critical insights being collected by their team? It's always important as researchers to know what's important to other teams, but this is also going to allow you to see what's important to teams that collect feedback on users. So hopefully you're able to create a stronger picture of your users overall. And if your team is overseeing an experience measurement program like mine, this is just a perfect opportunity to ask for feedback. What do they know about the program? What are their perceived benefits? And do they have any ideas on how you can bring that data together? So once you've gone on this expedition, I'm hoping you're able to collect all of that rich information on the methods, mechanisms, you've formed some new relationships with teams. We're now ready to go into phase 2, which is all about defining what our experience measurement program is going to look like, it's going to feel like. And to do this, you're going to organize your findings of everything you found from these other teams. And you're going to do that in 2 ways. First, you're going to organize everything you found into push mechanisms or pull mechanisms. So push mechanisms, if you haven't heard this term before, are feedback mechanisms that push a method of research to users. So an example of that for our online grocery customers, right after they complete their purchase and they either pick up or get their order delivered, we send them an email. So we push it right to their email inbox. The other way you're going to bucket your findings is pull mechanisms. And those are really the feedback mechanisms that are in place to pull in user feedback. And those are completely initiated by the user. So an example of this from our expedition is we chatted with our customer support team, and they have a chatbot that sits idly waiting on our website, collecting feedback and questions from users. So that's a great example of where users are coming to the chatbot and leaving their feedback. So once you've done organizing all of those methods and mechanisms into push and pull, you're now ready to begin developing your experience measurement program, the big moment. And when we think about developing experience measurement programs, again, to ground us, these types of programs are ways to really think about, collect feedback on, and strategize around how you're going to measure your user's experience. So to do this, we're going to walk through a hypothetical online grocery journey. And this is the way that I'm thinking it's best to show you what we go through at PC Express. So at a high level, these are the 5 steps that our online grocery shopper goes through when they're shopping for groceries online. And you could think about this from your user as well. There's probably a high-level journey you can start with. So let's walk through those steps together. When someone is considering shopping online, they'll typically go through some discovery work where they'll go and research other types of services, they'll look at the prices, and then from there, if they choose to shop with us at PC Express, they'll go about browsing and considering the products that we offer. Finally, once they've figured out what they want to purchase, they'll create a basket, and a few days may pass before they get it via one of our stores or pick up through delivery right to their door. And hopefully they'll use those products to make something yummy. So, in keeping our user at the center, this is actually going to be the first swim lane in our user experience framework. The next swim lane is going to be all of those push mechanisms that we discovered in our expedition. And the third swim lane is going to be all those pull mechanisms that we discovered. So, just like that, you've built an experience measurement framework. Here comes the fun part. We get to now sprinkle in all of those methods and mechanisms that we discovered on our expedition. So I've just put in that customer support chatbot that we talked about a little bit earlier, but you can imagine when you're building out your map for your experience measurement framework, you're going to want to put in as much detail here. The team who owns that mechanism, how often they're collecting feedback, and maybe even an example of it that you can link out to. So this is a little bit of the hard part. We got to figure out where it is we're going to start measuring the user experience. So I would encourage you to have these conversations with your cross-functional partners and really figure out what are those key points in the journey that we want to measure. So typically where we start at Loblaw Digital is looking at the greatest action that our users are trying to achieve in their journey. You can imagine greatest actions might happen anywhere. It could be online, it could be in person, it could be over the phone. But for our shopper, 2 of the greatest actions we see are just after they complete their online grocery journey. And then the second one is when they get it picked up or delivered to their door. But we know internally from our research and analytics that there's also this beautiful window of time. Sometimes customers don't need their order right away, so they wait a couple days. So this allows us to also think about how our measurement system is gonna work alongside that time. So while the customer waits for their order, let's think about how we're gonna measure that first greatest action, which is right after they place their online order. So I've put a survey here for us to talk about this measure in detail. So when we're thinking about survey measures or just measures in general, we really want to think of them as if they're research questions. And everyone, I'm sure in this room knows, in order to build a great research question, we really got to think about what it is that we want to learn. So to do that, we're going to break it down into a couple micro questions. First, we're going to want to ask ourselves, who are the users or user segments that we really want to learn from? Next, we're going to want to focus on what information we need. I underscore need there because we really want to only ask them what it is that we need and lean on what we already know. Where we're going to ask is that strongest point of recall in their experience. So if they're just completing our online journey, you can imagine it might be shortly after that. When we're going to do it is hopefully a time that's not disruptive to them. We have to always consider why this feedback is important to our team. And finally, how are we going to go about doing it? So what are those tools and mechanisms that we're going to use? So if you're curious, this is what our actual real-life experience measure looks like for the PC Express online grocery service using all of those micro questions we just walked through together. So currently, we're measuring the experience of a percentage of our customers at a semi-regular cadence. When we do, or what we're hoping to learn is their satisfaction with the online grocery journey and any areas of feedback. So for those joining online, you might not be able to see, but all of the multi-select options have actually been inspired by qual and quant work we've done. Where we do this is on the order confirmation page of the journey. So the users had about 10 seconds to look at their order, make sure they got everything they wanted, and why we do it is to support the business in prioritizing online areas of improvement. And how we do it is a digital survey intercept that's distributed using an external survey vendor platform. So you heard me say up front that I believe the design of these research programs have incredible research powers, and those powers have allowed us to unlock how we sell our program value. We're now actively working on multiple surveys across our journey, and that's with the sponsorship and advocacy from our senior leaders. This program design has also allowed us to rally our cross-functional partners around measures we have in the survey. So specific questions are now built into the way we think about experiences to really see, are we moving the needle or not on our experience measures? For our UX research team, it's also allowed us to uncover where those not so obvious gaps are in the program. You can imagine once everything is mapped out, it's really easy to put circles around where we currently have gaps in knowledge when we think about our program. And finally, it's allowed us to create a stronger picture overall of how feedback is collected in our organization using that map and all the other different ad hoc methods that we use in the team. So to round us out, I really wanted to make sure I was also going to give you an example of how experience measurement data is used in practice. So to do this, I thought I'd share with you some research that our team did last year. We ran some qualitative research with our online grocery shoppers to figure out where in the areas of our experience could we really improve. And what we heard is that they wanted stronger communications around their grocery order. You can imagine this is really important at times where we might substitute one of their favorite products or a product just might be out of stock. So we discovered this really rich qualitative insight around stronger communications, and we presented it back to our cross-functional partners. And naturally, we got a lot of really great questions from them, and a lot of them were quantitative in nature. They were asking questions like, how big of a problem is this? And are we seeing this across the country? And is there one communication method that's actually stronger than others, or vice versa, not as strong? And these were all really juicy research questions, right? You get that back and you're like, oh, really want to dig into this. So our team did, and we did that using our experience measurement data. So what we did is we went into the survey vendor platform. We used a quantitative analysis to look at looking at our text analytics, and we looked up those keywords: email, communications, phone, ... And we were able to get a sense of how big this problem really was. And from there, to really be able to put that level of confidence and getting like a nice statistically significant sample, we did a manual verbatim analysis. So if you haven't heard of that before, it's where we pulled out a subset of comments and we read through them line by line, and we put codes attached to each of them. So it was really able to allow us to put percentages to these themes. So you're probably wondering, Jessica, what did you discover? What did the team find? So what we found was that email communications was actually the biggest area of opportunity for us to improve. So we did just that. We worked with our creative services team. We worked with product design, email marketing. Many teams at Loblaw Digital came together to revamp our email communications. So you can see the one on the far left now is an email that our customers receive exactly around that scenario I gave you when products are substituted. And the screenshots on the far right are the opportunity we had to also revamp our survey measurement program. So you could see the one in the middle is for our first-time user, and the one on the right is for those that are returning for a second, third, fourth, and so on time. So I think these show really great examples, too, of how brand and tone of voice can also come through in your experience measurement program. So this is a real example, right? How qualitative research discovered a theme. We were then able to scale it using text analytics, and then quantitatively help the business prioritize what to work on first. So this is just one of countless examples where experience measurement data has supported our business in making decisions. We've done this at all levels of business. If you're curious, please feel free to come talk to me after. I can even talk to you about how this has worked at higher level business strategy and vision work. But we're really proud of what our program has been able to help unlock for our teams. So you heard me say up front that I believe the design of these experience measurement programs have incredible research power. So hopefully I was able to convince you of that, but also ultimately show the opportunity it provides in creating stronger experiences for users overall and at scale. It only takes one survey to get started, and I promise it offers a wealth of opportunity to really thread together different research methods and create a ripple of impact on the businesses that we all support. And dare I say it, even change the course of directions for businesses themselves. Thank you.